So we talked a lot today about go-to-market, with Matt and obviously with Sam, being regional leaders and then bringing products to market and being the first to do it in the ANZ region. That's what you did as well. You did the exact same thing with Datto. And something that I've always been curious about is when you were first in seat and you were building the team and you were considering the types of sales reps that you wanted to bring on board, what did you index on when you were thinking about the types of reps that you wanted to bring on board from a cultural perspective, personality perspective? What were the key things that you looked out for?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a role with Enable before, and that's who brought me across to Australia. And I was initially my boss in the States, Frank. He said, "Hey, we need to go hire a couple of salespeople. Can you go off and hire them and interview them?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I had no idea how to do an interview. I'd never done one before, and I didn't get any coaching or training or learn what to do or what to ask for. And I remember asking these really awkward questions, like what I call as canned interview questions. Tell me a time when you have demonstrated this sort of success or resilience or this, that, and the other. And I'd ask a question like, "Do you like cold calling?" And he's in an interview, and the guy goes, "Yeah. Like it's just part of the job. You have to do it. So I'm more than happy to do it." And I hired him, and a couple of weeks in, I said, "Mate, you got to do some cold calling." And he goes, "Yeah, I'll get to it soon." And he didn't do any. So what I learned in that process was that you can't trust what people say in an interview. You have to, if you're looking for a skill set or trait or a characteristic, I don't like to just hear them say it. I like to look for them to demonstrate that skill or characteristic or trait of what I think is required to deliver on the outcome. So for example, in order to have drive to get up and do cold calling, you've got to be resilient. You've got to be driven. You've got to really have an appetite to go out there and win and enjoy the thrill of the chase. So when I'm interviewing people, with that aspect, that piece in particular, I don't say, "Do you like doing cold calling?" But a bit like what we talked with Sam earlier, in terms of like people that have come from being in a sport or people that have achieved something significant, the resilience that they've got to go through in order to achieve that goal. And when I ask them to explain, what is it your expectation to this role? And they say, "Look, I know it's cold calling, some warm calling, and just hitting the phone, doing 50, 60 dials a day." And I see how they respond. And if they're nervous when they're saying that to me, then that's a sign that they're probably not going to be a good fit. If they don't blink, so I'm looking at like body language here. If they don't blink and they just go, yeah, absolutely, no, more than happy, I've done that before. I know what it's going to be like. Yeah, I'd like to get progressed at some point, but like totally, I know what I'm getting on board for. Then that's a sign that I look for. And other things that I typically index on, as you say, is I evolved that over time because I made a lot of mistakes. In the early days, I just hired people that I thought were the good fit. They sounded good. They felt right, but I didn't realize what I was really looking for until I actually assessed. And I said, well, who are my top performers? And I could use you as an example. You were incredibly driven. You're intelligent. You've got an incredible emotional intelligence. You're incredibly coachable, and you were a great culture fit as well, right? So. Like you, from a characteristics perspective, a conversation with you, like I can pick those things up if we just have a conversation. They come out in that conversation really quickly. I don't have to ask you if you're bright. I can tell that you're bright based on like the books that you've been reading, the conversations that we're having, like they're intellectual topics. So does that help?
Yeah, definitely. And what I really enjoyed is that you have gone through your own sort of growth journey with regards to interviewing and diving deeper and just looking at things from a different lens, like looking at the personality behind the outcome, and so or the work that somebody needs to deliver on, especially from a cold calling perspective. I feel like we can all relate to cold calling. That's our first activity as a sales rep, and it's the toughest.
It's the toughest. I always say this is going to be the hardest job you ever had.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than picking up the phone and just smashing it and getting rejected day after day, week after week. It sucks. But I tell you what, I love it when someone's done it and they've got the resilience, they've been successful and they've had those shitty days and they come back the next day and they're successful. Even if they're not successful, but they
still turn up. They still turn up with a smile on their face and they're ready to dial again.
Yeah. So smile and dial, baby.
But like going back to like just that different lens, it just speaks to your ability to then, or not auto adjust, but adjust your and take those learnings and then apply them. And then I would imagine that you continue to have built your learnings each time you were interviewing people. You were, getting deeper into the weeds of it and really identifying how to find the right person for each role. So I'm kind of curious, were there any times when you didn't hire the right person?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely hired the wrong people. I've hired the wrong people in sales. I've hired the wrong people in marketing. Marketing is a tough role to fill. That's a topic for another day. But the mistakes that I've made in hiring salespeople are when I haven't followed a process of what am I looking for. I've met someone out socially, and we've got on like a house on fire socially, but I haven't actually, and I've over indexed on one aspect, which is that compatibility, but I haven't actually really taken the time to drill into how driven is this person, how resilient is this person, and that has put us in a position where I perhaps hired someone that would be a better farmer than a hunter, but we've hired for a hunter role, as an example. So my framework is IQ, EQ, drive, coachability, and inquisition, and then cultural fit as well. And when I would be interviewing sales reps, particularly in the early stage business where you're looking for those young, hungry, driven reps, is I would have those numbers written, or those words written down, and I would be going tick, tick. And then if I got to the end of the interview and I thought I haven't seen someone demonstrate drive in this, I would go and look for it, and I'd ask them questions. In some capacity to really try to extract that information. But it would be, I would try to steer the conversation to a place that they would be able to demonstrate that they'd done that. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's a success story, maybe it's something. I want to see something that shows me that you had success and a result and a cause and effect of that is drive.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, something my dad taught me growing up was, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. And I feel like that's sort of in alignment with what you're saying. If you don't have a framework and you haven't put it together, and especially with an interview, it's super important to have a process and a playbook, if you will, or a plan or a playbook or whatever it may be, that you can tick those off and say, yes, I've looked through the lens and I've uncovered that this person has the drive. They've told me about a sports story where they, were down 2-0 and they came back and they're super competitive, something along those lines. Like, I think that's super key, and it's not
endurance sports.
Yeah.
Triathlon.
Ironman's like,
like long swimming. It's the things when people tell you that they've done something, and you're like, holy moly, you're crazy.
You're crazy, and you need that. You have to be a little crazy to be in SaaS sales, I feel.
You definitely do.
But
you definitely do.
There was one other thing I wanted to ask you, Bergs, and I haven't seen this since Datto. So I don't know. I'm quite keen to really understand like how you fostered such a amazing culture, and being someone who was born at Datto, if you will, one of the early hires that you brought on board, saw the transition from a small, close-knit team that scaled into a close community, if you will. Whether it's from the employee side and our colleagues that we went to battle with every single day, to the MSPs that you worked with. You built such an amazing community, and I wonder if you could just speak to how you did that. What were you focusing on to deliver such an amazing culture and such an amazing community?
Yeah, it's as you're talking, I'm reflecting, and remember there was an HR director that came over from the UK that was looking after us, and she saw, I don't know if you remember, she saw the culture that we had, that we were about 20 people at the time. She goes, this is not going to stay the same. This is going to change as you get older. Like, it's impossible to maintain this. Yeah. And I took it as a personal challenge that we're going to maintain this. and we did maintain it. We certainly did until COVID. And then things got a little bit less than desirable. But I've reflected on this, and I don't entirely know like it wasn't something at the time that I specifically went out and thought I'm going to build a great culture. But part of it was when I look at what we had there is we had a team of people that were fighting for something much bigger than just a job. Like we were on a mission to disrupt an industry. We were on a mission to create a legacy for ourselves. We were on a mission together to build something that had never been built before. And we were all doing that together. That wasn't just the sort of thing that you can come in and do a job. But we saw it. We had that success. We were building, and quarter over quarter, it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And everyone was growing as well. And one of my proudest reflections from the time at Datto is when I look at the 3 or 4 sales managers that we had towards the end. So we had Lauren, Reese, Tom, and Adam. All 4 of them ended up moving on from Datto, but they all went into regional leadership roles at other software companies, and they're now either directors or VPs at other companies. And that for me is a testament to the culture, the enablement that we all built together. And it wasn't just me; it was us coming together to collectively build it.
Being able to speak to what drives you and motivates you is seeing your colleagues, seeing your people that you've worked with in the past, seeing their success and seeing that as a driving motivation or motivational force for you, just speaks volumes to what you were indexing on or what you were focusing on. Was just how can I bring a team together and how can I get the most out of them, but at the same time help them grow and motivate them to be the best they could possibly be. And I remember you were amazing at one-to-one coaching. Your man management ability is probably the best I've seen. Your ability to speak to somebody and get them on board for the company's vision, not just their own vision, but the company's vision. And this is you speaking to, we're all one team, one dream. I know that's a cliche, and that's something that we used to chant all the time, but that's what you built.
Yeah.
And
the other, actually, as you're talking, the other thing, talking about one team, one dream, one thing which I think is incredibly important in a sales culture is you put the team before yourself. So we had a philosophy of the customer or the partner comes first, the team comes second, and you come third as a rep. And if you see your teammates struggling, then your priority is to help your teammates achieve goals ahead of yourself. And there's someone I remember early on made a decision that impacted positively their personal commission off a deal, but in my opinion, it wasn't the right thing for the customer or the teammate. I can't remember exactly what it was. And we had a conversation about it. And I said that you're thinking short term here. Like, we are here to build a business and a team and a community. And if you're just going after instant gratification, your own pocket, then you will not be successful. And the other philosophy was that if you look after the team will look after you. And when you've got a team rooting for you and backing you, then you'll be successful. And there was multiple times when a certain rep was falling behind on their quota and another rep would come in and give them one of their deals to get them across the line. That was pretty cool. Like, that's pretty unique, right? Someone literally took money out of their pocket because they weren't getting commission and gave it to someone else. Yeah. But what that did for the whole team, and that person then hit quota, it built up this incredible momentum and it snowballed. So like that for me is important. Yeah, there was a couple of times I think people can't remember who, but somebody needed to go to President's Club. They needed 1 or 2 deals, and that's what happened. We shared the load. Yeah. So instead of 2 people going to President's Club, 4 people could go to President's Club. Yeah. And I don't think there's many people that would give their deals away to help someone else like that, right? And that's compounding. That's compounding. Across the whole organization. Yeah. I want to change topics. Yes. So you've been on board and super excited for you to join us on the Bluebird journey. And you've come from working in SaaS sales, and we're here doing something like pretty unconventional. Most people that I know that have been in recruiting go towards the software side, and we've done the opposite. You've obviously seen something in it, and a vision and a value proposition, but I want to ask, what are the 2 to 3 things that have happened on this 3-month journey for you that you didn't expect? What are the either ahas or the positives that have come about through this journey for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, transitioning from SaaS sales to recruitment is definitely not something that I ever thought I would do, because I've always been on the SaaS sales side of things, recruiters are our enemy sort of thing, but that's not actually true. And that's one of the things that I've actually learnt over the course of the last 3 months. Recruiters are your friends. Speaking to myself personally, I go to every interview, every meeting with the purest intentions in mind to try and help my fellow SaaS community members, my AE brothers, sisters, on how to help them get a better opportunity, not save them from where they're currently at, but more so, how do I help them transition from the current role to the next role that's going to help elevate their career or help them with their career aspirations or earning potential. So one thing that I've really found to be positive is the response from AEs, from leaders in the SaaS space. So hearing our USP, that we're made up of ex-SaaS professionals, and we're coming in from an empathetic perspective, and we know how they feel, and so we have their best interest at heart as well. So that's been really rewarding for me. Number 2 has been the resounding like the aha moment for me is the resounding response that you get when you share that this is our USP. The aha moment from the AE is just, they haven't heard of it before. So for me, that's a bit of an aha moment, that what we're actually doing is unique and what we're doing is adding value. So that was number 2. And number 3, recruitment is hard. Recruitment is a difficult job. It is not as easy as one would think. It's a difficult role, and I think what makes it difficult for me is, again, I want to do this with the best intentions. I'm not looking for easy placements or anything like that. I want to ensure that A, we're working with the best clients, and B, that we're aligning the right reps to the right roles, because I've been in a position where I wasn't happy in my seat, and I use that as a driving force to not put somebody else in a seat that will make them unhappy. So those are the key 3 things over the last 3 months that I've enjoyed learning. But I love the grind and I love the hustle. You know that about me. I live for it. I don't feel like I've worked a hard day if I haven't had 10 interviews in one day. So I'm loving it so far.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all of that as well. The highs are high and the lows are low. And for me personally, I love being back on the front line. I've been out of individual contribution sales roles for 5, 6, 7 years, probably longer, to be honest, probably 2016. So it's at 8 years. But for me, being able to sharpen my tools, sharpen my sword, and gain those skills back and be out there and speaking to people, I personally love it. But again, it is hard, and there is a misconception around the work that recruiters do in the market. I got another question for you. So there's a topic, or there's a conversation, and it comes up daily around job hoppiness, which is seeing someone go and have multiple jobs and short stints at a company, and then moving on and potentially on again, and they don't have tenure. Now, so there's some valid reason for this, and there's also some reasons which are probably, in the eyes of an employer, not that valid, right? And there's potential trends. Can you talk to your interpretation of good hoppiness or bad hoppiness? And maybe good and bad aren't the right words, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. In terms of job hoppiness, I totally understand what you're saying, good versus bad. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of job hoppiness, but...
Why not?
Let's be super clear on what I mean by job hoppiness, because I think that's important, because job hoppiness can mean one thing to one person versus another. So I think what I mean by job hoppiness is you've got 9 months at one job, you've got 10 months at another, maybe 1.2 years at another. Let's call it five jobs in 5 years. I deem that as job hoppiness. And why I'm not a fan of that is because all the reasons for job hopping are typically negative. Either A, you're job hopping to, you're job hopping to get a promotion that you couldn't otherwise get at your current role, which suggests to me that you've been unsuccessful in seat. It means that you're not potentially a loyal candidate, and it's a lot of effort to hire somebody. There's a cost, a big cost associated with hiring the right talent. And so to leave within a year shows that, in my opinion, there's the lack of loyalty there, which I don't agree with. So I would say that job hoppiness, I'm not a fan. There can be reasons, compelling arguments as to why somebody has had to have left a job or a role, especially in this climate. I understand how SaaS works. I understand that it's very volatile, and especially you, in the current market that we're in, so people get made redundant. I get that. That's not in their control. But there may be instances as well where it was a bad cultural fit. Like, I get all the reasons as to why, but I feel like if there's a trend, that's what we need to index on. Is it 5 roles in 5 years? If it's 2 roles in 5 years, or you've had one for 3 years, you left, you were given an opportunity, you were headhunted potentially. That happens all the time. We do that for a living. So you're headhunted, you have a great CV, you've been successful, you go into this seat, you've been promised better earning potential. It's not a cultural fit. So you leave. And then you go to another job that maybe now you are feeling a little, not rushed is the word, but it's, you're not happy where you're at, so you feel like you have to jump quickly. So you don't make the right decision potentially. And so you end up in this other role that may not be a fit again. So it's hard to say good and bad, like you said. It's hard to identify. I think you need to look beyond the CV and ask the questions. And if the person is genuine, the story is compelling, and they are a good seller based on your own perception of what makes a good top performer, then give them a shot. But if there's a trend and you can see past the inauthenticity, then that's probably when it's, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, when I think of job hoppiness, there's different reasons for leaving a job, and all reasons are okay to leave a job, because you can't stay in the same job forever. But when you leave for a promotion, 3 jobs in 3 years, then history often repeats itself, right? If you have been made redundant, if you've been in a company for 3 years and then you've been headhunted, get paid more money, and then that organization's made you redundant, and then you go off and you get another job, and then that job's made you redundant. I don't really classify that as hoppiness. When you drill into what is the true reason behind that, there's 3 jobs in, call it 3 years, but it's what is the reason? If it's outside of your control, truly outside of your control, they've shut the business unit down and your job is made redundant, that gets a pass in my book. But I spoke with someone today, and they'd been with one company for 1 year, and then they got an opportunity to make more money. They went to the next one, they didn't like it. Then they set up their own business, and then they had that as a side hustle, and then they went off and got another job, and then that he was made redundant from that role, and that was his last one. That smells a bit fishy to me, right? You've had 4 or 5 jobs, 4 of them less than 12 months. History has got a chance of repeating itself, right? So it's really important that that you consider these moves. And the reason that you want to consider your CV and job hoppiness is because it is expensive to hire people. It's not just the cost of a recruiting fee or the cost of the salary, but it's the opportunity cost. If you come on board, it's going to take you at least 6 months to get up to speed, if not 12 months if it's a complex sale. The reality is, if let's say you come on board for 9 months and then you leave, and you probably weren't productive, you probably haven't paid for yourself, but also you're probably just getting into money-making time in that 9 to 12 months, which means that they have to hire someone else. They've lost out on 2 years of opportunity because of that hop. And that's what organizations are trying to risk mitigate and protect against.
I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. I could not agree more.
Now that you've been a hiring manager, you've been a recruiter, you're working with hiring managers in a tough climate, knowing what you know now about the markets, the candidates, the challenges, what advice would you give to a hiring manager at what they should be looking for? Or what they shouldn't be looking for?
I think the advice I would give to a hiring manager with the current context and climate of the market, with what I know now from the limited experience that I have over the course of the last 3 months, is I would suggest that really identify what it is that you're looking for in your candidate. And what I mean by that is, again, be super intentional and deliberate with all factors of how you deliver this, but whether it's from a job post, whether it's from conversations with an outsourced recruiter, or whether it's with the candidate themselves, which is the most important key piece of all of this. So really understanding if it's, for example, a business development rep whose role and responsibility is to come in and win new business, let's dive a bit deeper. What type of personality does it take to be a pure hunter or a business development rep? You have to be determined. You have to have resilience. You have to bite down on your mouthpiece, for example, and show grit, because you're going to get a lot of no's, especially in today's market. You have to be a value seller as well, or an educational seller. If you're a startup organization, companies don't know who you are. So you need to be able to have somebody who's going to come in and really educate the market, but also provide value along the way throughout the sales motion in order to get the win. So it's really understanding the type of personas that you are going to hire and delving a little bit deeper. And the deeper you dive, the better the candidate you're going to get back. The clearer that you're able to articulate the candidate or the profile you're searching for.
And how does a hiring manager or company go deeper?
I just think what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing hiring managers throwing a blanket statement of what they think the role is going to be or entails, without actually spending time or work or effort. So what's worked in the past might not work today. So there needs to be some refinement and course correction on, 2 years ago we hired a BDM for this particular market or this particular segment. It's now 2024. We need to refine and consider the type of rep we need now in today's market. So I think that contrast is super key. Just going through refinement is super important. That would be my advice for any hiring manager looking to improve the level of candidates they're either A, speaking to, or again, if they're working with a third-party outsourced recruiter, they'll be able to then articulate this very clearly to the recruiters, who will then be able to go and do a better job for them.
Yeah, when we were working with the HR manager had a different vision, the sales director had a different vision, the MD had a different vision, and each of them weren't communicating properly. So we ended up putting a whole bunch of candidates forward. And because they'd been working on it for a long time, they kept compromising on what they wanted, which meant that they just didn't have that stable, true requirement.
100%.
Which is really, really difficult to hire for.
If you don't have a clear vision of what you're hiring for, how can you expect somebody else to have a clear vision of what to search for?
And also communication as well. And the other, I guess my lesson through that as well, being new into the game as well, is make sure that we are doing an intake with the actual person hiring.
Yeah.
The one that can say no, not just the one that can say yes. Like that's really, really important.
100%.
Yeah, I think like we have to do what's right. And there was an organization that we worked with, and the placement was there, and we encouraged him not to take it because it probably wasn't the right thing for him. we knew that it probably wouldn't be a long-term tenure, which wouldn't be great for them, and it certainly wasn't the right decision for the candidate, right? So we have to play the long game, but yeah, the having consistent, standardized vision and communication is incredibly important.
Super important. And yeah, for both client and candidate alike. So being able to represent the brand, at the end of the day, if we work with a client, we're representing that client, and we're going to represent them as if we are the hiring managers. And so, like, as you just said, communication is key, vision is key. It's the only way for us to be able to deliver and articulate.
You know, the other thing I've noticed is that life is so much better in what we do if it's a partnership between us and the client.
Yep.
More often than not, what I'm facing is that it's an us and them mentality. And the companies that we've worked really, really well with, it's been a partnership where we collaborate, we work together on a shared goal of getting them the best placement, as opposed to others are consistently pushing back and saying it's not quite right, and are really looking for that unicorn if they're paying a fee for service, as opposed to really collaborating.
Well, what I've found, like, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because what I have found is that the clients that we've worked with who have had a clear vision and have communicated excellently with us have been the ones that we have partnered with effectively. The clients that we've worked with that don't have a clear vision, that haven't been able to communicate what they're looking for, that's when that friction has caused.
And part of that comes back to what our ideal customer profile is, which
Correct.
is startups, scale-ups that are probably 20 to 100 staff that don't have internal HR, that don't have talent acquisition, that don't have the experience. The reality is you and I have got a tremendous amount of innate domain expertise, having done this for a decade and 15 years. Like, we can add so much value over and above their internal team to a technical decision maker, to a talent acquisition person or other recruiter that hasn't actually done the role themselves. And like that's also what I think we need to do, is focus on that ICP and really build partnerships with them.
I think if we're going to really talk to our ICP, we definitely need to focus on those 25 to 100 seat organizations. That's where we add the most value at the end of the day, and that's what we care about. But also, I think, sorry, yeah, you were going to say.
No, I was going to say the relationship is not just recruiting. It's how can we advise you on go-to-market strategy, what your team structure looks like, what your comp plan looks like, how you should think about running events within this particular region. Like, I'm flying to Melbourne tomorrow to help a couple of our clients run an event that I've invited a whole bunch of customers to. I don't think there's many other recruiters doing that. And the value they will get from that will far outweigh any fee that they paid for service.
100%.
It's value add, and it's I now understand what it means when like MSPs would say we only want to deal with our ideal customer profile, those that really see the value in us. I now get that.
Yeah, I think because at the end of the day, like, our business is centered around placing candidates, and if we're going with the best intentions, we want to ensure that we are working with organizations that will foster growth, organizations that are modern, exciting, and organizations that there's not going to be friction going back and forth between us and them. And typically that's where the ICP sits, the 25 to 100 seats. They don't have an internal recruiter yet. They don't have the extensive network that maybe you have or that I have. They don't have the GTM strategy experience just yet. So that's where we can add the most value. And advisory, yes, we're placing candidates, but I think that's
it's almost
the key
consultancy
piece.
monetized through a placement fee.
Exactly.